and welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Bud Elliott. That's Tom Fornelli. Danny Cannell joining us shortly. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and all across the 24/7 Sports Facebook network. Thanks for hanging out. Just, you can tap, press, tickle, or just hit that subscribe, hit that like, come and join us in the chat because subscribers get to talk. The community is fantastic. The community is growing. We want you to be a part of it here at youtube.com/cover3. An episode that was much clamored for, an episode that was much anticipated after we put together our SEC schedule, the perfect SEC schedule for when Texas and Oklahoma join the conference. Now we will be turning our attention to the Big Ten, which will be receiving USC and UCLA prior to the 2024 season. Real page-turning moment. We'll have the SEC expanded. We'll have the Big Ten expanded. We'll have the college football playoff expanded, and it's going to be an exciting season. But that coming up in just a little bit. Gentlemen, I wanted to begin with something that kind of was not on my radar, I'll be honest, as I came into the week. But once the USFL college draft got underway, man, some dudes, because the USFL college draft is something that's a little bit more unique, where we've seen the USFL last year or even the XFL. It's a little bit more of like, oh, yeah, I remember that guy. The USFL is drafting players for its spring season that just finished college. Now they're focusing on day 3 guys, undrafted free agent type players. And for these players, it could be a great opportunity because you're going to get to go out there, continue to compete, continue to showcase your skills. If you are drafted, the league is supposed to start in mid-April. Obviously, the NFL draft a little bit later. If you are drafted by a team, then you're off to go work with that team. You're going to do all the spring activities with that NFL team. However, if you are cut by that NFL team prior to the 53-man roster, well, you've got a place with that USFL team that just drafted you. Nice little way to have a paycheck. Nice little agreement, minor league, major league, to be able to pair the talent and give an opportunity. There were some names, gentlemen. We got Adrian Martinez going second round to the New Jersey Generals. Tanner Morgan, second round to the Michigan Panthers. Chase Bryce of Clemson, Duke, and App State fame going first round to the Houston Gamblers. Malik Cunningham to the Birmingham Stallions. Darius Davis, fresh off his campaign with TCU. He got drafted. Lindsey Scott Jr., for those of you who get real into the incarnate word overs and incarnate word running up the score in the FCS this year. Just a lot of names. And so as some fun, if you've not gotten a chance to go look at the USFL college draft, there's some fun players there. It's going to get me interested. I just wanted to ask, what were some of y'all's favorite, or do you have a favorite pick from the USFL college draft?
My takeaway is redemption for me, finally. I don't know why there were only 7 picks in the first round. Did like the New Jersey Generals tamper with Tom Brady or something? Why didn't they have a first round pick?
They didn't have one at all?
No, there were only 7 picks in the first round based on this sheet that I'm looking at.
Maybe they traded their pick to get like more later picks, and that I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that I watched this.
Chip's our USFL expert, but no, the 8th pick of the draft was Tanner Morgan. Now there are 8 teams in the league, so while this was technically a second round pick, this is really a first round pick. And a few years ago, in my way too early mock draft, I had Tanner Morgan in the first round of one of those like 3 years ago. So for him to actually be a first round pick shows that I was way ahead of my time.
You had him as a first-round pick in the NFL draft. Now he is a first-round pick in the USFL draft. Danny Cannell joining the conversation as well. Bud, what's
I'm gonna pull this up? I mean, vamp me for a second. I can't believe anybody would pay Tanner Morgan to play football for their team.
We're talking USFL draft?
Yeah, wow. College draft. I mean, did you see the list of dudes? I mean, there were some
Malik Cunningham.
Players. Yes.
Yeah. There were some other names on there too. I was a little bit surprised. Like, so who owns their rights now? Are they still eligible for the NFL? That's the only thing, like with some of these guys. Yeah. So they're just drafting guys based on hopefully they play for them. Right. But if they get drafted by an NFL team, they're saying, peace, see you later.
And if they get cut by that NFL team, they go back to the USFL. That USFL team still has their rights. So if you are somebody like Jake Bobo from UCLA, who's a physically gifted player, and you go out there and it's just kind of a loaded room, then you still have your spot with the New Orleans Breakers to be able to go back and play for them and continue to work your way towards that NFL goal. It seems like there's a lot of agreement right now between the NFL and the USFL in terms of how these players, especially these college players, can move up and down.
Assuming that these teams have some clue of what they're doing, right? This is actually a pretty useful list if you were doing like off-season power ratings to go through and be like, okay, they lost this guy. This guy wasn't an NFL dude, but like he seems to have mattered and, maybe didn't have crazy numbers popping, but, interesting nonetheless. Like a Noah Taylor at Virginia. I'm a little surprised Mason Brooks is not considered to be an NFL guy here. I thought he was, a decent player for Ole Miss. But like you can't get a better quarterback than like Lindsey Scott or Tanner Morgan. I'm kind of shocked by that. Like this is.
Do you know who the first pick overall was in last year's USFL draft?
I didn't know the USFL existed last year, so no.
It did. The number one pick, once again, by the Michigan Panthers, who apparently lived up to that hype. Shea Patterson.
I remember that now that you say that.
What are these guys making? Like, what is the salary in the USFL?
$60,000. I think
you get insurance. Are they employees or 1099 guys?
No, you get some sort of like health insurance. I think 60,000 is the minimum, and then there's like first tier, second tier. It's a tiered salary type situation.
So there were only 5 quarterbacks drafted. Are there existing rosters then for these teams?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So some teams, who are the best players in the USFL?
Last year, Cavante Turpin.
Yeah, okay. For sure. I remember him from TCU, and I remember he definitely tore up the USFL last year because I was watching all those games. Do you guys watch spring football at all, or have you watched any of these leagues?
No.
I was watching the Hurricane Stadium Series game at a sports bar, and yes, one of the TVs had XFL, and one of the guys I was with was sweating in under 35.5. So I can say I took in opening weekend.
I watched a little bit of it. I saw some of it just like as it was in passing. And then I talked to Matt Berry, who called one of the games. There are some things, I think this is in the XFL I'm talking about now, but there are some things where the NFL, I think, should pay attention to, maybe college football too, especially with safety on the horizon. Kickoff return, like kickoff, I like the way they do that. It encourages more returns, but there's not the running head start where all of a sudden you turn around and there's that big collision, but they start kind of closer and backed up, and then there's just like a little retreat, and then they go. I like the way they do that. Also the onside kick, which I didn't think I would like because I've always been like more of a traditionalist, but the one team took, instead of doing the onside kick, they did the 4th and 15 option, converted. And if you're a late game situation, who would you rather see? Bryce Young with an opportunity on a 4th and 15, quarterback ball in his hands, or a kicker hoping on a whim that you get a funky bounce and try to recover it that way? Like, I like the fact that there's some skill on that one. So like, I think it's all of it's breeding ground for not only for talent, but also for experimenting with the rules.
Yeah, I've always been kind of I've always been kind of behind that 4th and 15 idea instead of the onside kick. I can't remember who first proposed it a few years ago. It was a blogger, I know that, but I've always kind of dug that idea. But with the spring football leagues, I've taken on an approach where until one actually sticks, I'm just not devoting any my time to it.
Same. Like if it's on TV and I'm around and I'm laying around and there's not golf on, I'll throw it on.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'd rather watch so many other sports. Like I love football, but I don't need it year round because I also like other sports.
Yeah, I like 3 or 4 years ago, I was on a bachelor party in Austin, and it was raining really bad, and we were kind of waiting for it to clear up a little bit before we took the Uber out, and we had it on. We're like, can we find a way to bet on this? And so we did a little bit, but I think that league folded. What league was basically like in existence only for the tech, and then they realized like the app is worth
the AAF or whatever.
Yes, yeah, and they're like, oh, okay, the app is actually worth something. The on-field product is worth 0.
That's where the players their checks were bouncing or they weren't getting paid. That was awful. That was a bad look.
That was actually a great league because I bet the under in every single game for like the first 2 weeks because I figured there was absolutely no practice. Like they just threw everything together and like, all right, let's go play football. I'm like, there's no way in hell these offenses are going to be able to score points. They don't know any of the plays.
That's correct.
Again, under 35.5, never a doubt on Saturday night.
But weren't there lots of overs? I saw the stat. I thought it was like the overs went like 3-1 this weekend in the XFL.
Ooh. I mean, I wasn't paying that much attention to it.
They set them pretty low. I mean, there was a 35.5. There were some low, but I think they were lower scoring games.
Yeah.
Are all these teams like are they trying to like capitalize on being near major college cities? Because like Memphis, there's
Birmingham.
Yeah. Philly, I guess.
New Orleans.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh.
I will not follow the race for the playoffs. I will not know statistics, but Danny, I'm kind of with you. If it's on and I'm flipping around, sure, I can nosedive in on football the same way I nosedive in on like a high school football game. You show up, you're like, hey, I can watch some football here for an hour, but I don't think I'm going to be having like hardcore rooting interests.
Do you guys want to start a USFL fantasy league?
Nope.
No, not that interested.
Here, I can give you my $200 right now.
Right.
Chip trying to draft Patrick Mahomes and Mark Andrews somehow. Yeah.
Tom knows I always overdraft Mahomes and Mark Andrews. That's I don't know any running backs, no wide receivers. I'm just going to build around these two. Just waiver wire. Of it.
New Jersey draft positions penalized for violating off-season roster management rules.
There you go. Criminals.
Yeah, they tried to get Tom Brady too. All right. New
Jersey was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Throw me on the record as a New Orleans Breakers fan. They had the most number of dudes that I remembered. Tyler Scott from wide receiver from Cincinnati, Noah Taylor, who was at Virginia and North Carolina, DJ Ivy from Miami, Keaton Mitchell, who's kind of a sick running back from ECU, Isaiah Moore from NC State, Tyler Baker-Williams from NC State, the aforementioned Jake Bobo from UCLA, and Dante Stills, who I thought was an NFL draft pick, but is a 6th-round pick here in the USFL, a disruptive defensive tackle coming out of West Virginia.
New Orleans is going to finish first by a mile or last by a mile. They're doing that thing where like college baseball coaches like, look at this signing class we just had. I'm like, all 12 of those are going pro. You are actually going to have 0 of those kids get on campus. Like this is maybe they found a market inefficiency and these guys are just not good NFL draft prospects. But yeah, like everybody else seemed to kind of stay in their lane with getting guys that are not going to make an NFL roster. And New Orleans is like,
we're getting all these dudes that we saw on Saturday. Like they only watched the major family of networks on Saturdays, and they just drafted those guys. All right, let's get to the business of the day, which is, of course, trying to construct the perfect Big Ten schedule. This is going to be a 16-team league. And as we jump into this, I want to just sort of like check, because I think that for our purposes, it does make sense to do the 3 permanent partners, rotate out 6 other conference games one year, 6 other conference games the next year. Less debate, as the Big Ten is already playing a 9-game conference schedule. Do you think, as the Big Ten, remember, is undergoing leadership change right now, Kevin Warren on his way out, we don't know the next commissioner, do you think that the Big Ten will use another format for constructing its future league schedule?
No.
No division.
I hope not. I would like to see some similarity, especially if these are the 2 that are going to evolve eventually 5-10 years as the super conferences, and maybe they add something like that. But one of the things that's been very frustrating is trying to figure out which conference is doing what, who's playing on level playing fields, like who's playing 8, who's playing 9. I would like them both to play 9 conference games, 1 additional Power 5 non-conference opponent, and then 2 they can do whatever they want. But I would love to see some continuity. I think that'd be good for the sport.
I like that. Tom, you got us set with the must-have rivalries. Some like Michigan and Ohio State, that's very simple here, but you want to run through some of these others and your basic thinking as to why these were our starting blocks for the exercise.
I mean, I think most of them are pretty self-explanatory. Michigan, Ohio State, you have to have that. Michigan, Michigan State, in-state rivalry, kind of a big deal. They pretend they're not, but they are. That's how you know it is. Indiana, Purdue, in-state rivalry. Illinois, Northwestern, in-state rivalry. Iowa and Minnesota, Floyd of Rosedale, Iowa, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota. Like those 3 states kind of just have all their rivalries already embedded, and they have to play. And then obviously USC, UCLA. I mean, these, I feel like no matter what variation we end up with here, or whether the Big Ten, I think those rivalries you can pretty much lock in. They will be played. They will be part of the permanent pods.
So where do we want to start? Because I've got a suggestion. Can we just round out Iowa? Because we have already represented the Floyd of Rosedale, and we have already represented the Heartland Trophy. And Nebraska doesn't have one yet.
Mm-hmm.
Can we throw Nebraska on there, the Heroes Trophy?
Yeah, I mean, when I did this exercise before the show, Iowa was my Texas. Like when we did the SEC, for me, Texas's three rivals were very obvious. Same with Iowa. It's going to be Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska. It's just I don't think Nebraska and Iowa is etched in stone, so I didn't include it in the must-haves.
It seems like the Big Ten has tried to make this a thing for sure, right? Yeah. Iowa doesn't really play that aesthetically pleasing of a brand of football, so I do think that this is going to be one where ratings and I bet you the broadcast partners are going to have a big say in this. They're going to be like, yeah, that's a cute little trophy. Don't care, right? For some of these, especially because in this league, there are a million trophies, but it does seem like the league has really tried to push this. Nebraska needs an annual rival that it actually cares about. I vote yes on this too.
I'm going to tell you that for this purposes, like if we are, I know we didn't decide to cosplay or role play the different sides of this, but I am my caucus number one priority for these debates is trophies. I want to keep all the trophies as possible. Trophy priority party here in the TPP here in Raleigh, North Carolina.
I will tell you right now, you can try to keep all the trophies, but you can't because there are too many trophies.
I thought about teeing up some eulogy music so I can say farewell to them as well.
Knowing Tom, he probably went through a lot of iterations on this, like behind the scenes. And like, what was the maximum number of trophies, what was the smallest number of trophies you were able to keep out?
There were 17, I guess, officially recognized trophies, if you include the $5 bits of broken chair, which I do. I was able to keep 10. Yeah, and here's the thing too, like the other thing, because I did go through a whole bunch of iterations for this. I got a story coming out on it on the website tomorrow too, kind of like Chip, what you did with the SEC last week. And there is no, because like with Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, it's a lot more natural just geographically, and there are already being some rivalries that exist. When you throw USC and UCLA into the bunch where there really aren't any actual rivalries that exist between those two schools and anybody in the Big Ten, every single school, fan base, athletic director is going to be pissed off about something because I can't keep, there's no format that keeps everybody's rivals that they want. Like we've already got fans in the chat complaining that Minnesota and Wisconsin is not considered an etched in stone must-have game. I don't know if that's what they generally feel or if the Minnesota fans are scared of getting Michigan, because I did have a couple Minnesota fans DM me last week saying, please don't make us play Michigan.
Michigan would be on my list for USC or Michigan State.
I mean, I don't know how Tom has his going, and I mean, he's the guy I'm going to look to in this, obviously.
Here's what the problem I ran into with USC. I want to give them, because for like television purposes, because I was trying to think of that too, like what TV is going to want. But you have to remember, the Big Ten now has 3 networks broadcasting its games: CBS, NBC, and Fox. USC is keeping the Notre Dame game every year. So that's kind of a protected rivalry already, even though it doesn't count as a Big Ten conference game. So if you give USC like an Ohio State or a Michigan, you are then forcing them to play Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame in every other year. So NBC is going to get that game anyway, regardless whether it's in California or it's in South Bend, because they own the rights to the Big Ten and they own the rights to Notre Dame. So they'll get that game. So for me, since USC is going to be playing Notre Dame every single season, and it's going to be getting at least, then you split Ohio State, Michigan. And so on alternate years, USC is going to get Notre Dame and then Ohio State, Penn State, or Michigan, Penn State. That's a really tough schedule for the Trojans. And you are trying to maximize your playoff bids. And USC is a traditional power that you want to help try to maximize. So the 3 rivals I came up with for USC are obviously UCLA, because duh. But the other 2, I wanted to give them somewhat of a lighter slate. Michigan State, because the day that UCLA and USC announced that they were joining the Big Ten, I tweeted, if USC Michigan State isn't a rivalry game where they are playing for a Trojan horse trophy, the Trojans versus the Spartans, then what the hell are we even doing? So for me, Michigan State needs to be one of USC's rivals, because while the trophy idea is fun, that's also a way to establish them as a quote unquote Big Ten school, to make them feel like they're part of the conference. It's natural as going to get when it comes to trying to shoehorn them into this process. And then for the third rivalry, I gave them Northwestern, 2 private schools, 2 major markets, LA, Chicago.
I think if I'm Fox or CBS or NBC, I'm like, piss on that. I didn't shell out this kind of money to get USC Northwestern annually or USC Michigan State. Like,
but you're still going to get USC Ohio State every other year, and then USC Michigan every other year, and then USC Penn State every other year. So you're still going to get Notre Dame, Michigan, and Ohio State versus USC every single season.
I'm going to say that USC needs to have either Michigan or Michigan State.
So now you're going to make Michigan play Ohio State, Michigan State, and USC every year?
I was thinking more like USC could get UCLA, Penn State, Michigan State.
Yeah, Penn State has nobody either. That's what
that means that USC would get either Michigan or Ohio State annually. So you're not getting the top 2, like one of the top 2 annually, right? They're like guaranteed, but then you could still give them that Michigan State.
Do you like USC Nebraska, the most Western Big Ten team, lines up with the new Western
that could work.
counterpart?
I ended up giving them to UCLA, but yeah, that could work too. But the other thing to consider, though, is as far as television ratings, what's going to do better, Ohio State, USC, or Ohio State, Penn State?
Ohio State, Penn State.
Yeah. So I wouldn't prioritize making USC play Ohio State over having Ohio State play Penn State every year.
For those listening on the audio side, Michigan, we already has Ohio State, Michigan State. Ohio State has Michigan. Michigan State has Michigan. Indiana has Purdue. Purdue has Indiana. Illinois has Northwestern. Iowa rounded out. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska, which of course means that Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska all have Iowa. We don't have seconds for either of those. Northwestern has Illinois. UCLA has USC. USC has UCLA. I think we can go Penn State and Maryland. I know that's not a trophy game, but they've been they've been playing for a long time, and there was a time where that was a rivalry game. If we're trying to line up some partners, I think that that's a way we can put one on the board for each of them.
Penn State has played more games against Maryland than it has any other Big Ten team.
Yeah.
They just weren't members of the Big Ten yet.
They were independent.
I got no objection there.
Mm-hmm.
Danny?
No, I have no objection at all either. Who is Penn State's TV game? Like, who is their pairing where you're going to pair them with one of the...
I think Ohio State. I think you have to have that game.
Yeah.
Yep. It's probably Ohio State. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Poor Rutgers. We're just waiting to fill you in as competitive balance.
Like, if you're Rutgers,
Maryland regionally,
yes.
Yeah, I think
new
so.
teams.
It's somewhat drivable for them too, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's kill a Maryland and a Rutgers here. Not literally kill, just we're not.
I wouldn't,
basketball stuff here. All right. That's Ohio State, Penn State. Got those off the board too.
All right. So what's the Minnesota? What's the one that we're clamoring for? Everybody wants Minnesota.
The chat wants Minnesota, Wisconsin, I guess.
Paul Bunyan's axe is awesome. They've played for it 133 times, dating all the way back to 1890. The trophy party suggests that we do give Paul Bunyan's axe a permanent rivalry.
Is that which game is Paul Bunyan's axe?
Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure we weren't arguing for Minnesota, Michigan.
It is the most played of all of the Big Ten rivalries.
Gotta have it.
All right.
Yeah, see, like that trio right there for me. Like I said, doing Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, when I've done, they were pretty much the easiest every time, and it was very constant.
All right. So right now, where can we go next to be able to start to fill this thing in?
Well, I think for me, like before USC and UCLA joined the conference, the 2 closest schools in the Big Ten were Illinois, Purdue. It's a 90-minute drive. They have a trophy. So for me, both of them are looking for second rivals. I think Illinois and Purdue are good matches. Plus, you add in the kind of spice of Illinois' defensive coordinator just recently leaving to become the head coach at Purdue.
I like that.
Yeah, I can go with Illinois, Purdue. So Purdue now has Indiana and Illinois. Illinois now has Northwestern and Purdue.
Which means that their third rivals need to be one of the big teams.
What about the Illabuck? Can we throw Illinois up there for Ohio State?
I did. That's not the one in my latest model that I came up with for other reasons, but I do think that there's a very good chance the Illabuck survives. It's one of those situations where with UCLA and USC, I feel like what the Big Ten is going to try to do is they're not going to want to give them East Coast permanent rival games. They're going to try to keep their permanent rivals as far as the western half of the Big Ten as possible. So I ended up with UCLA adding Illinois as a rivalry because UCLA and Illinois, I think Illinois is the second most. UCLA has more games against Illinois than all other Big Ten teams except for one. I can't remember what it was.
How? Is there any
Bowl
reason
games.
for that?
Bowl games and just playing games. Non-conference matchups. It's 13, I think. Let me see if I can find that real quick.
Occupy similar tier within they were meeting in these similar tiered bowl games.
Yeah, no, here it is. The team that UCLA has played the most is Nebraska, 13 games. The second most is Illinois.
Do we like Rutgers Northwestern, by the way?
Throwing them each a bone.
Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's gonna increase the odds of getting teams to bowls. It also, I think this keeps most everybody happy, right? So in terms of your TV partners are gonna love this because it's a game that none of them probably have to get stuck with. Right?
That is a Big Ten Network 11 a.m. game if I ever saw one right there.
Right. It also, that's one that Fox and CBS and NBC are going to love because it means it increases the chance that we're going to get, a Michigan USC or Ohio State USC type thing. The only people who object to that, I think, are probably the people who have to sell tickets at Rutgers and Northwestern. Although people tend to buy tickets for teams who win, regardless of if they're actually good or not. Is that a rivalry? Are there any Northwestern rivalries that we're actually missing here? Or in Rutgers, clearly no.
No, it's just Illinois.
Land of Lincoln trophy?
Penn State for Rutgers.
I feel like we already did that with the Maryland thing, though.
Yeah, but they actually do border each other.
Yeah, but if you're for good game setups, the only good game we're giving Penn State annually is Ohio State. We're not firing that bullet against USC.
We haven't given
if you're going with the 3-6-6 model, you just alternate Michigan and USC every year. So they're playing Ohio State and Michigan or Ohio State USC every single season.
Yeah,
But see, that's it. You can't get every single one. You've got 16 schools. A bunch of them are big brands. You cannot get every big brand game. This is the problem I've been dealing with all week trying to come up with these things.
Well,
I like Rutgers and Northwestern as a pair.
Oh, it is a disgusting pair. I think we should do it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, sometimes you just got to know where you're at. I have been the Rutgers and the Northwestern at times, when everybody's pairing up. Bunch of guys, a bunch of girls. Sometimes you're the Rutgers, when you're running with a bunch of Ohio States and Michigans, you got to go find the Northwestern out there. And you know what? You can have a great time with the Northwestern. You and the Northwestern can have a ball. All right. You still be hanging out with the Ohio States and the Michigans, but Northwestern, yeah, that's my Northwestern over there.
Chip likes smart girls.
All right. Coming up on the other side, we continue. We'll do a quick recap of what we've got on the board so far, and we round out the future Big Ten schedule with USC and UCLA on board. Next.
There's something coming.
Let's face it together. Engage. Your crew are a part of you. They lift you up to accomplish the things you never could do alone. Together, you are never without hope.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. Here's what we've got on the board so far. Michigan, 2 partners locked in, 1 partner left to be decided. Ohio State and Michigan State. Ohio State has Michigan and Penn State. Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. Maryland, Penn State, and Rutgers. Michigan State still need 2 more. They just have Michigan. Indiana has Purdue, still need 2 more. Rutgers has Maryland and Northwestern. Purdue has Indiana and Illinois. Illinois has Northwestern and Purdue. Iowa is done. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska. Minnesota need 1 more. Already got Iowa and Wisconsin. Wisconsin need 1 more. Got Iowa, Minnesota. Nebraska just with Iowa on the board so far. Northwestern with Illinois and Rutgers. And our poor Pac-12 refugees here as UCLA just as USC and USC just as UCLA. Lots of work to do for the newcomers. And if you are listening to this on the audio side, we're trying to keep you up to date as much as possible. I cannot encourage you enough. Really good work done here to be able to give some visual aids. So youtube.com/cover3 if you want to watch along and play along like the many of you that are watching live, and we'll circle back to be able to watch this later.
Do we want to give UCLA Indiana so when they get together, they can talk about when their basketball programs used to be good?
Yes, if we get to that point and we need a third for each, then that could certainly work. The like fading blue bloods, the like now grayish blue bloods.
The comments are about to blow up with UCLA being what, like a top 10 team right now, and Indiana just.
I know Indiana just lost by 15 at Michigan State.
Yeah,
Indiana's bad at basketball now.
No, they're good at basketball.
They're
Actually,
good. I just refuse to say that they're good at basketball because it's more fun to troll.
Yeah, they are actually on the upswing right now in terms of their basketball.
Led by 35-year-old Trace Jackson Davis, the Indiana Hoosiers are a solid NCAA tournament team.
Hey, listen, I am here for traditional bigs and old guys running college basketball because the way that the NBA has gone, college basketball can be dominated by a 24-year-old who's just out there muscling everybody. Here for it. All right, so where do we want to round somebody out, or do we want to add a second partner for Michigan State, Indiana, Nebraska, UCLA, or USC?
Well, Nebraska has to have one of the California schools. You can't give Nebraska both California schools. So the question is, which California school do we want to give them?
If you're actually concerned with USC's schedule strength, then maybe it makes more sense to have Nebraska, USC. And they're barely storied programs. I guess I could see that. I mean, do you love that if you're trying to like make big games? But I guess you got it. Like Nebraska's spending, maybe they'll get back.
Yeah, you've got to project that with Matt Rule and like the resources around there, that could be something that, I mean, Matt Rule versus Lincoln Riley, you can sell yourself that
sexy.
Yeah,
sexy.
Yeah, I think USC.
All right.
And then another thing to consider, if like someone in the chat's mentioning Wisconsin, UCLA, I think that's a good matchup on paper. But do you want to make the California schools play in the cold weather states?
I mean, yes, they joined the league.
They joined the big.
Yeah, but see,
which ones aren't cold?
Wisconsin and Minnesota and Michigan are really the only 3 states where you're very highly likely to see snow games at the end of the year. Like, because the season ends in November. Like, the snow doesn't really come to the Midwest until late December.
I just think you need a bigger game for UCLA. Like, I think they have to get one of the top 3.
One of your Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got to put newcomers.
That's what I'm saying. We got to get the newcomers some good.
Yeah.
Probably Michigan, right?
UCLA, Michigan.
But now Michigan's got 3 tough rivals.
I mean, tough-ish, but like
UCLA is more manageable than USC.
And Michigan State. I mean, they're a little up and down, you know.
Hey, Michigan State's been to the college football playoff.
This is true.
UCLA hasn't.
Yeah. Neither is USC.
That is true. I think UCLA, Michigan. Right?
I think so. I don't know why. It's the colors or something. It just feels right.
The colors will look absolutely fantastic.
Or you could do Penn State. I mean, Penn State has Ohio State, Maryland. You know.
What about USC?
Penn State, USC. I love that. But
Mhm.
I think Tom's gonna think that's too hard, and given that we already gave him Nebraska, I don't.
It's not even that. It's just, again, I don't think the Big Ten's going to try to give them East Coast permanent rivals. They're going to try to mitigate travel as much as possible.
So if Ohio State already has Michigan and Penn State, do you think, Tom, it is likely that the third, because I mean, this is one of those situations I thought about too, is like, who is the biggest voice in the room? Because Kevin Warren's on his way out. And if they have to make these decisions before there's a new commissioner in charge, or if there's a new commissioner in charge, then that commissioner ain't going to be the biggest voice in the room, not going to be able to like really hammer their fist on the table and make things happen in a way that, they feel like they can control the best interests. It's going to be a free for all, in which case I might think that Gene Smith is one of the biggest voices in the room, the athletic director from Ohio State. And if Gene Smith doesn't want to have Michigan, Penn State, USC, because that is the, 3 of the top 5 sort of programs in the future Big Ten, then I think we could round Ohio State out. We just need to round Ohio State out with a more manageable third partner.
Rutgers.
I'm cool with that. I mean, that
So
is
Rutgers for who?
Ohio State, and close Ohio State out. That with Michigan and Penn State already locked in, even though a television executive wants to throw USC on there, that I don't think Gene Smith would allow Michigan, Penn State, USC to be Ohio State's permanent rotation.
Because here's like the other thing you got to consider too, like when it comes to trying to figure out TV matchups. Ohio State's already got Michigan, Penn State. It's playing a 9-game conference schedule in a conference that will still also have USC, UCLA, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Iowa. Ohio State's going to be playing 3 of those teams every year, along with their permanent rivals. You have to give them breaks.
I mean, this new schedule is easier than the one they were playing.
Because
no, it's not.
They're getting out of the
no,
they didn't have to play USC. They didn't have to play Wisconsin and Iowa every year. This is
the
not
bottom
going to
of
be
the
easier
Big Ten,
for anybody.
Yeah, the bottom of the Big Ten East was
dog
I
shit.
guess that's fair.
Yeah. I like that. Give Rutgers to Ohio State, so we close out Ohio State with Michigan, Penn State, Rutgers. And again, like that is my strongest take: is Ohio State will not get screwed in this process.
The only concern I have with that is now I don't have the Illabuck.
But every other year.
But Illinois does need a big kind of, because with Northwestern, Purdue, that's too soft. So you need to give them like a bigger third opponent. So Illinois, Michigan have played a lot. You could go Illinois, Penn State. You could go Illinois, USC. It is farther west, so the travel is not as big of a concern.
I mean,
for USC.
You're buying USC into the league, and the biggest name you're giving them is Nebraska.
I could do UCLA, Illinois.
USC is not the television ratings draw you think, though.
Yeah, but it's going to be their nighttime game. Like if you're the league, aren't you trying to program big games for them on the West Coast?
You're going to have big games because they're going to be playing one of Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State every single season. They play 2 of them some years.
But I want them to play 2 of those every single season. Like that's the draw. It's not Indiana or Northwestern. Like I think if you have 3 TV partners, don't you need to set up a minimum of 2 really good games every week and probably 3?
Mm-hmm.
What about Michigan State?
No, NBC is already out of the picture because NBC is getting USC, Notre Dame every year.
Sure, but that's 1 week. I don't know, man.
So Fox and CBS get one giant USC opponent every year, and they're going to be playing Ohio State or Michigan every single season.
What about USC, Penn State? That closes. I mean, it's tough for Penn State to get Maryland, Ohio State, USC, but that closes us out for both Penn State and USC.
Again, the only issue there will be the travel.
The
It's
Michigan
part of
State,
the deal, though. At some point, you got to be like, "Hey, you guys signed up for this."
Everything for USC is a flight, right? Like there's nothing
Correct.
They're busing to.
But if you could take an hour off of a flight,
yeah, and time zones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the other thing too. Penn State's in the Eastern time zone. Would you rather have them flying to Central time zones or the Eastern time zone?
What about Wisconsin with either USC or UCLA?
I like that.
I do enjoy the idea of USC and UCLA having to play a snow game. I just don't know if the conference will be in on that or if they'll be into it.
You want to give Wisconsin USC?
That would do numbers.
I think it's like big enough games or like big enough names. Yeah.
I think that you could do. I think that I would rather see a Penn State or Michigan State fall on that USC line as our big draw.
They have
Also,
played some.
you
good
know what?
Rose
No, wait,
Bowls,
whoa,
too.
hold on. USC's third rival is Michigan State. I'm not accepting any other. I'm not accepting any other option there.
What if we switch Nebraska to UCLA?
Yeah,
then we can
give
put
Nebraska to
Michigan State
UCLA and give Michigan State to USC.
Okay.
We have to have the Trojan Horse Trophy.
I kind of like that.
All right. So then, by the way, that means that.
Oh no.
Cool. All right. That looks correct to us here
Mhm.
on the chat. Sorry, this is another edition of the podcast. You guys should probably subscribe and get us to 26,000, by the way, because like this is going to be much better on video than it is for audio.
When we embed this in Tom's story, we're going to embed the YouTube just because there's just like open acknowledgement. This is a much better show with visual aids.
Yeah.
All right. But for those listening on audio, trying to keep track along, Michigan, we need one more. We just got Ohio State and Michigan State. Congratulations, Ohio State. You're in the books. You've got Michigan, Penn State, and Rutgers. Penn State needs one more. We got Maryland and Ohio State. Maryland needs one more. Got Penn State and Rutgers. Michigan State needs one more. Got Michigan and USC. Indiana needs two more. Only sitting currently with Purdue, the old Oaken bucket. We've got Rutgers closed out at Maryland, Northwestern, Ohio State. Purdue at Indiana, Illinois, need one more. Illinois got Northwestern and Purdue, need a big dog. Iowa closed out at Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska. That's perfect. Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, need one. Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, need one. Nebraska, Iowa, UCLA, need one. Same with Northwestern, which only has Illinois and Rutgers, need a big dog. UCLA, which has USC and Nebraska. USC, which has UCLA and Michigan State. We so far have not given USC or UCLA anyone on the farthest East Coast. So that fits a good suggestion and sort of a soft rule that Tom has imposed. And we've tried to maintain as many of these trophies as possible. So where do we want to go next?
Should we give Indiana, excuse me, should we give Indiana another one? They're the only one with one.
Indiana needs to have Michigan or Penn State.
I think it's Michigan State.
Yeah, no, you can actually Indiana, Michigan State, I think have played quite a bit. So you can give Michigan State with Michigan USC definitely needs kind of a soft landing for its third. Because like we can't give them Penn State and bring back the land grant and ask the Spartans to play Michigan, USC, and Penn State every year. They would go 6-6.
Yeah. Sorry, land grant trophy.
I know.
Which was
actual
just made up a couple years ago anyway. So
did it just get applied? They're like,
it was when Penn State joined the conference, they needed to have somebody to play on rivalry week.
All right. So what about so we need soft landing for Michigan and
what about harder games for some of these bottom dwellers?
Yeah.
You know, like I get you want to get them some wins, but
the George Jewett Trophy, Michigan and Northwestern.
That works, but another one too. Hold on, let me look real quick. Let me look this up because I don't have it memorized. It's Michigan's all-time opponents. Now, can you guess who Michigan's played more than any other team in the history of the world?
Minnesota.
Rutgers?
Ohio State.
Okay, is your guess, Chip? You're correct.
Ohio State is my guess.
Second at 104 is Minnesota, which we could do, but
Little Brown Jug is iconic.
Yeah, I agree. I think Minnesota makes sense there, but the other option is another school that kind of needs a big opponent too. Michigan has played Illinois as many times as it's played Michigan State. So I feel like Minnesota or Illinois are the two best options there. Minnesota because of the Little Brown Jug, but Illinois because you need to give Illinois a top opponent. So which one do we want to prioritize?
I think we want to prioritize competitive balance. Right?
Yeah.
Because the other bit, like the options to close out Illinois are Michigan or Penn State.
Mm-hmm. Or USC.
Ooh.
But Bud doesn't want to give USC, UCLA, Michigan State, and Illinois.
I just think you need a bigger traditional Big Ten team for USC. I think you need to have like big time matchups annually.
But
Michigan State doesn't do it for me. That's just kind of like a meh.
So then we can
it's not going to compete against the SEC.
We can give USC Penn State, but again,
Yeah,
the travel. I think that I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just thinking that the travel thing will be an issue. But the way things are breaking
they fly
down,
private, I assume, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's one trip to the East Coast every other year.
But remember,
That
California
takes 40
cares
minutes longer.
about the environment, which is why they're always flying private jets everywhere.
What about Rutgers bumps up to Michigan, Illinois goes to Ohio State?
I like that.
Wait, Rutgers bumps to Michigan.
Mhm.
Take them off
Michigan,
of Ohio
Rutgers,
State, give 'em to
sure.
Michigan,
And
Okay,
then
I'll
and then
hate
give
that.
Illinois to Ohio State, and then the Illabuck is back.
Okay, got it. And Ohio State gets Illinois. Illinois gets Ohio State. So we are closed there now. Chip,
Yes.
you recap that while I do this?
Sure. Michigan is closed out. Your permanent rivals are Ohio State, Michigan State, and Rutgers. Ohio State is closed out. You have Michigan, Penn State, and Illinois. Rutgers is closed out. Maryland, Northwestern, Michigan. Illinois is closed out. Northwestern, Purdue, Ohio State. Iowa is closed out. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska. Everyone has 2. Now we just need to pair up some thirds. And newsflash, folks, it's going to get messy.
Mm-hmm. See, this is what I've been dealing with all week. You're getting to this point where it's
Frankie hasn't been walked. Lynn hasn't talked to Tom all week. He's just been crunching Big Ten schedules.
This is what I do in my free time. Yes.
I think UCLA versus either Minnesota or Wisconsin. Furthest west, you're worried about travel.
Yeah. I mean, let's first of all, let's just round it out. Let's go Penn State, USC. Let's put it in.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And then there is, if you want the rivalry trophies, I brought it up earlier, the $5 bits of chair is Wisconsin, Nebraska, or Minnesota, Nebraska.
I like that.
Minnesota, Nebraska.
$5 bits of chair. The Minnesota-Nebraska rivalry started in 1900. They have played 63 times. Now, when did the $5 bits break into our consciousness?
2014. You want to know the origin story for those who aren't aware of the $5 bits of broken chair?
Yes.
The Goldie Gopher Twitter account was talking shit to Faux Pelini on Twitter, and they created, during that back and forth, the $5 bits of broken chair, and the schools actually went along with it.
I mean, that got more run than the civil conflict. So, good job there. All right.
I do have a little problem with this, though, in that if you're Minnesota, annually you are a clear underdog against Iowa and Wisconsin, right? Does Minnesota want to go into the year like they're also a clear underdog annually on average against Nebraska?
I don't think it's by much.
How many schools available is Minnesota not an average underdog against?
Indiana, Purdue, potentially Maryland.
But not like a double-digit underdog. Like Minnesota may be an underdog, but not by a great number.
I'm just saying, like, does this kill Minnesota's bowl chances more often than not? Right, because normally they get in Northwestern. Now they're going to get like a lot more Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, in addition to how often is Minnesota drawing a schedule where they're dogs in 3 of their 9 Big Ten or in 6 of their 9 Big Ten games? Like, do we care about that, or do we think the margins are close enough to where Minnesota is like, we can beat all these teams, or at least enough of them to make bowls?
Yeah, I think the margins are close. Like, I mean, it's like your classic, like what did I say? A Big Ten West game is the home team favored by 3.5 and an over/under of 45.
Damn right.
So Minnesota, Nebraska.
And I do think, honestly, like those states in that portion of the Big Ten West will prioritize playing each other over anything else.
Yeah, I mean,
they care about those games.
You know who needs a good opponent is Purdue.
Indiana and Illinois.
They need somebody.
UCLA?
No. I mean, you can
Wisconsin,
argue
UCLA. I was going to go.
You can argue Indiana needs a good opponent too.
Michigan State's a good opponent.
And Purdue's also better than Indiana, typically. Like Indiana has the COVID year and literally like nothing else.
Yeah, well, then we have to give Indiana Rutgers because Rutgers is the only other program you can sit and say Indiana has been consistently better than.
I'm fine with that.
But Rutgers already has Maryland,
like
Northwestern,
Rutgers.
and Michigan.
Yeah, I like Rutgers slate too. That's closed
That's
down.
the point. Like there are bottom feeder programs in the conference. You can't find opponents that they're going to be better than. Sorry, Indiana fans, you can get mad at me for it again.
So the best, if we want to give Purdue something to go with Indiana and Illinois, to me, the top, it's either got to be Wisconsin or UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think makes the most sense?
Nothing with UCLA makes the most sense in the Big Ten, Chip. So I think, you know what? Okay, so that would leave Maryland and Northwestern. So I think with our available options remaining, I would go UCLA, Indiana, Purdue, Wisconsin, and Northwestern, Maryland.
UCLA, Indiana, Purdue, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. Because Purdue, Wisconsin's probably like a 6-hour drive, so it's not that bad.
What do you think, Danny?
Man, Northwestern. Who are we pairing Northwestern with? Because they'll have a cakewalk then, wouldn't they?
Illinois, Rutgers, and Maryland. That's the problem. Yeah, but that's why.
In the transfer portal era, I refuse to accept that any Big Ten team is a cakewalk for the Wildcats. Like their roster quality since the portal has debuted has tanked. Like they can't get enough good transfers in there to offset like your hit rate, which like everybody uses the portal now to paper over what you got. It's the same thing as like Stanford, right? I'm all in favor of giving Illinois or Northwestern rather the 3 worst teams in the Big Ten if possible. Like it gives them a chance to make a bowl.
They're not playing Indiana.
Not yet.
I'm just saying, I'm taking offense to you calling Illinois one of the 3 worst teams in the Big Ten.
I guess, and that is fair. Sorry, I'm pretty hopped up on Cold Miss today. The whole thing with this comes down to me is like the lone good game combination left is Wisconsin UCLA. Right? The rest of these are not games that we would be really excited to watch for the most part. Mm-hmm. Do we care about like grabbing the lone good game left?
I think so. I think you want as many good guys. I jump on that one.
Because like Maryland, UCLA would be like literally the battle to see who could have the fewest fans show up for a highly rated matchup. Good.
I like Wisconsin, UCLA.
So do we want to go Maryland, Indiana, Purdue, Northwestern, UCLA, Wisconsin?
Yes. Yeah, I think like the 3 TV partners too are going to be like, yeah, guess what, Big Ten Network, you
getting Purdue, Northwestern.
Yes,
right.
Consistent.
And if you want teams to go bowling,
it also makes everybody else's strength of schedule look better. If Ohio State has beaten 3 other bowl teams named, Purdue, Indiana, and whomever, right? Like, I don't know. Like, do Wisconsin fans want to make a trip out to Cali every other year?
Yes, they want to do it twice a year. They want to go to the Rose Bowl. Like that's in the Wisconsin mindset for sure. I like that. Wisconsin, UCLA. So that closes
Tom,
it out.
What do you think? You are Mr. Big Ten.
I'm okay with that. Again, I enjoy the idea of UCLA playing at Wisconsin 1 November where it's, 25 degrees and snowing. But I guarantee you if this happens, UCLA, Wisconsin will be in September or October every single season.
So then are we saying Maryland, Indiana, and Purdue, Northwestern?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Got to have some dogs on the Big Ten Network.
Big Ten Network. We've constructed we've already got your picks locked and ready to go.
But I mean, geographically, at least, like they're not big games. But for Purdue, Indiana, Illinois, Northwestern make a ton of sense. They're the shortest drives Purdue has for every conference game. It's Indiana's, Purdue and Michigan State are border schools or in-state. Maryland is just kind of what you're stuck with. Northwestern has no rivalries outside of Illinois, so it's kind of hard to find homes for it.
We found a home for it. It's 11 a.m. Central Time on the Big Ten Network. All right.
This is kind of cool. It does keep, like to Tom's point, there are not a ton of super drivable games within the Big Ten, or really any league now, compared to like the SEC is the only one that's really super closely clustered along a couple states. I mean, obviously there's outliers there too, but that's a great point for if you're an Indiana fan or a Northwestern fan or Purdue fan, that you can drive a lot of those and you can win those games.
So again, we're using the 3-6 mafia model, where you get 3 permanent partners and then the other 6 rotate every other year. So you do see every single team at least every 2 years. And if you, across a 4-year cycle, you get to see every team home and away. These 3 permanent partners you'll play every year. To recap, Michigan's 3 permanent rivals: Ohio State, Michigan State, Rutgers. Ohio State has Michigan, Penn State, Illinois. Penn State has Maryland, Ohio State, and USC. Maryland, Penn State, Rutgers, Indiana. Michigan State has Michigan, USC, and Indiana. Indiana with Purdue, Michigan State, Maryland. Rutgers, Maryland, Northwestern, and Michigan. Purdue draws Indiana, Illinois, Northwestern. Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, Ohio State. Iowa has Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska. Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, UCLA, Nebraska, Iowa, UCLA, Minnesota. I mean, you talk about like states and schools that are all playing each other. That's a nice little nook right there. Northwestern gets Illinois, Rutgers, Purdue. Congratulations, Cats. UCLA has USC, Nebraska, Wisconsin. USC has UCLA, Michigan State, and Penn State.
Ideally, I'm thinking about this. Northwestern was kind of an afterthought for us through this entire process. But ideally for Northwestern, it dawns on me, their rivals should be Illinois, Rutgers, and one of the California schools. New York, Chicago, LA, where all of their alums live.
It's not a... Is it too late? I think the pieces are all in place. I can't take one out, or else this whole thing, this is a Jenga. It's all going to just collapse to the floor and make a loud noise.
Also, if any of our listeners and viewers have criticisms over the 3 we came up with for every school, please go through and do this exercise on your own and show us the perfect answer, because it is impossible when a conference adds USC and UCLA to the Big freaking 10.
And please try to do one that is realistic in terms of like, hey, I'm going to turn my homework in to the broadcast partners and then have them not immediately stamp F on it.
Yeah.
Speaking of things you should stamp, I know a lot of people don't watch the chat live during the show, but you're listening to us. Maybe you're at your desk. Click on over to that YouTube tab that you have open and hit like for us. I know the last time when we actually asked for the likes mid-show, they shot up a lot. Everybody asking for them in the chat is awesome. We really appreciate y'all. But I know some people are kind of audio only because they're working and then kind of flipping back and forth. Hit that like button for us. We'd really appreciate it.
Love it. And again, youtube.com/cover3 if you want to go and see this. And Tom has his own edition. His own work will be live on cbssports.com on Thursday. And you can follow him on Twitter at BudElliott3. You can follow him at Tom Fernelli. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. We will be back Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be taking some live audience questions. We will dip into the big old bag of mail. And those rule changes, yeah, we saw those rule change proposals. College football could be looking a lot differently. We will dive into that. So come and join the discussion. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See y'all.